Hello and welcome to Insight, everyone. I'm Nnamdi Odipo.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori. Thank you for joining us.
This episode will center mostly on safety. First, we would highlight the seeming negligence of jetty operators in adhering to safety precautions for transportation on inland waterways. Some recent marine accidents have raised concerns over the quality of boats and operators, as well as the professionalism of those monitoring and regulating activities within Nigeria's inland waterways. We'll then move on to safety precautions in movie production and the standard operating procedures for professionals in Nigeria's movie industry. This is yet again a fallout of recent events linked to the boat mishap in the Annam River involving Nollywood actor John Paul, popularly known as Junior Pope. Of course, Elizabeth is also on standby. Lizzie, why don't you quickly bring us up to speed?
Yeah, we'll also be talking about health. You know, heat wave is a global phenomenon and it is affecting everybody. So a medical expert will be telling us what to do, what to wear, and what to wear at this time, the function of water, and why some persons hallucinate during this season. Do stay with us.
Very well then, let's kickstart the program.
Whatever the issues are,
the National Assembly is constitutionally empowered to scrutinize,
however complex or intricate.
We have involved all the academia, the members of the academia. We have involved the academies.
Be it government policies or in fact any issue of public concern.
Our job is to help you gain clarity and make sense of it all.
This is not really healthy for our democracy.
There's a lot of agreements in terms of who has been in power longest and who becomes the governor of the state.
It's also in the quality of food being consumed.
After all, perception is insight.
And gaining understanding is also getting insight.
Thank you for staying with us on Insight. In some cases, or in many cases, or in some sense, marine transportation and navigation along the inland waterways remains, ordinarily should be, one of the safest modes of transportation. But is that the case in Nigeria? The seeming increase in the frequency of boat mishaps, many cases leading to loss of lives, puts water transportation in the spotlight once again here in Nigeria. My guest is Tayo Fadile, the Pioneer General Manager, Corporate Affairs, National Inland Waterways Authority, NIWA. Of course, retired at this point, but is on hand to give us his insights on this issue. He joins us from Lokoja, Kogi State. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Fantastic. I think it's best we begin with the seeming low level of awareness, or should I say apparent disregard for safety by users of our inland waterways services. And I'm talking about the people themselves who knowingly patronize boat operators with no regards at all for safety protocols, not even caring at all about their own safety. I mean, is that perhaps from lack of awareness of the inherent dangers, which, by the way, sounds ludicrous even as it escapes my lips? Otherwise, what is the rationale for someone endangering oneself or one's life at the expense of money or whatever else is for that matter? Is it correct, sir, to therefore assume that sensitization of the users themselves is perhaps one of the most important safety measures that we need to meet at this point in time?
Yeah, thank you very much. Safety issues are a little bit complicated. Ignorance is part of the issue, and when there are no choices except that in some rural area, that is the only means of transportation. They don't have any other means. So under that circumstance, they are bound to want to take a chance on the boats. And some of them will even tell you that they have been using that same boat for decades and that nothing happened. I remember when I was in NIWA, they did a lot of sensitization in some of these rural areas. And we even have to use the local language in those areas. And we gave out free life jackets to several of these communities. But some will still tell you that they don't even need the life jackets, that their grandfather that have been using this boat, they don't use any life jackets. That's part of the ignorance. I said, well, we have to continue to manage. So it behoves on NIWA now to redouble their efforts and continue to sensitize and enlighten these people to do the right thing. And I think NIWA, to a very large extent, have reached out to these communities. However, when you look at the vastness of inland waterways in Nigeria, you will know that it's not easy for NIWA to cover the entire length and breadth. Because Nigerian inland waterways, vastness is more than 10,000 kilometers, out of which 3,000 is navigable all year round. So even to cover 3,000, and if you go to the Niger Delta area, almost every village has a point, a loading point for passengers to move to another community. So it becomes very difficult for NIWA to be able to cover all the stretch of these areas. So what they can do is to just try their best. That's why they have several area offices, but those area offices may not have the capacity to cover the entire length and breadth of the 10,000 navigable waterways in Nigeria. So I think first thing that has to be done is that the federal government must empower NIWA to recruit more staff that they'll be able to post to all these outlets that these boats take off. Because if you don't do that, then you will not even be aware that people are using the boats to move from one place to the other, so you cannot even enforce your regulation. So no matter the regulation you design, you must be in a position to enforce it. Because once you can't enforce it, it's a sheer waste of time.
I want to say something real quick too, because when you talked about the whole issue of capacity and NIWA's capacity, you referenced the apparent lack of, or rather the inadequate staffing of NIWA in order to enforce some of these rules or regulations that already exist. I wanted to just add quickly, or say quickly, that laws are made for man. And what NIWA does basically is to enforce the laws or regulations, as it were. But can you enforce laws and regulations that are not known, that people do not understand? You talked about the villages. You mentioned somewhere around the Niger Delta where, people said that, look, they do not want the life jackets because their forebears traveled these waters without life jackets. I mean, isn't that typical of the ignorance that we're talking about? Because, yes, we're seeing people die. Maybe then, because there were no records or databases, we do not know how many people died in the past when they thought their forebears or forefathers successfully navigated these waters. But now we do, and now, well, there are mediums, the media is there, social media is there, and we're getting blow-by-blow accounts of some of these accidents and marine mishaps happening, and they seem to be on the increase. So the point is, people need to know, don't people need to know what these laws or regulations are in the first place before we even begin to talk about the capacity of NIMA to enforce them? So we should perhaps begin from talking about what NIWA has done in the first place with sensitizing, users about the dangers or inherent dangers in marine transportation and why they should be aware of these issues.
Okay, thank you very much. You will recall that NIWA was established in 1998 by Decree 13, now caps 44 of the National Assembly. And when NIWA was established, basically it was supposed to administer, control, and supervise the entire waterways activities. And when it was established, NIWA drew up what they call a safety code. That means the guidelines, the codes, the things people should follow whenever they are using the waterways. For instance, they include making sure that your boat is duly registered with NIWA, making sure that the captains are qualified and registered with NIWA, making sure that you don't carry overload, because I can assure you 70% of the cause of these accidents you are talking about has to do with overload of the vessels or the boats. A boat that is designed to carry 30 people, you see it carrying 55, 70 people. So the force of it will even allow the boat to drown. Again, part of the code is that you should not, the captains and the passengers actually should not drink alcohol while on board. But some of these laws are not being adhered to. And of course, everybody that is going to use the boat, including the operators, are supposed to wear their life jackets.
Yes.
So those are the codes. And NIWA tried to publicize this as much as possible. Perhaps they can still do more. But those are the codes that, when I was there, we sent around all the riverine areas, and even the rural areas in Niger State. I recall that we did several sensitization campaigns, enlightenment campaign in Niger State, in Kebbi State, and all other states, Kaduna State, all the states that have sufficient waterways outflow. So, in Nigeria, sometimes they obey the law in breach. Nigerians usually don't like to obey laws. I'll give you an instance. Even with the Federal Road Safety Commission on the highway, you can still see that a lot of these vehicles, commercial vehicles, will not meet up to the standard. They will carry overloads, they will overload the passengers, and all this things to lead to accidents. In spite of the effort of the Federal Road Safety Commission, accidents still occur almost on a daily basis. We are not saying that one can rule out accident 100%, but I think the goal is to minimize it as much as possible. So I think, honestly, NIWA should be empowered to be able to do more. NIWA has the technical skill and capacity, but I think they need a lot of money to be able to carry out this campaign. Because this campaign requires a lot of money. You are supposed to print posters, you are supposed to use the TV, you are supposed to use the radio. When I was there, we used radio a lot, because the people in the rural areas are more comfortable with radio than TV. And we use the indigenous language. So we get to a lot of them. But like I told you, Nigerians generally don't like to obey rules and regulations. So what we can do is to continue to persuade them, is to continue to let them see why they should be on the clean side of the law. They should obey the laws, and maybe with time, the message will get across to them.
Actually, it's in the quality of what they can do, because we've seen people perform wonders even with not so much money, but then they were quite impactful in their campaign. So we are actually questioning the quality of NIWA's intervention here. But of course, when you spoke earlier, when you were speaking earlier, you ruled out some of these rules. I mean, for instance, traveling on the waterways being limited or restricted to daytime, and nighttime travels being restricted. Again, you talked about specifications for passengers and cargo boats licensed by NIWA. We know that operators are supposed to have authentic life jackets, and passengers are supposed to wear them. And there are more rules than NIWA and codes that NIWA has in the guidelines, or that you've talked about earlier. But then, like we said again, the issue is enforcement, and now NIWA is able to enforce them. I'd like to ask you a question in terms of, maybe perhaps NIWA would need more money to do this. Does NIWA have a database of licensed boat operators in Nigeria? Perhaps maybe during your time when you were there.
Database of what?
Of licensed, of qualified boat drivers. Qualified boat drivers who are duly licensed.
Yes. NIWA has that. NIWA has the data of all this. But please let me just mention one point that also contribute to a lot of boat mishap we have, and that is the code that says you should not travel after 6 p.m. nobody, no boat owners, operators must operate after 6 p.m. But in Nigeria, you discover that 10, 11 p.m., people are still sailing on the waterways. And that is when a lot of accidents will happen. Because you are not seeing clearly. Our waterways don't have navigational aids like in other advanced countries that will guide you and show you clearly the path you should take. Our waterways don't have navigational aids in all the routes. So that is why they made the law that anything after 6 p.m., just don't travel. You can continue your journey the following day. But like I said, Nigerians usually don't learn to or don't like to obey rules and regulations. And that is why this is another cause of accidents.
True.
There's a database. I know before I even left, they were working on a database that is getting all this information together so that they can analyze it. I don't know how far they have gone now, but I know they've started it because I left here about 4 years ago. And I can assure you now that they must have gone very far in terms of processing all this data.
All right, sir. I think this will be a good place
Thank you
to
very
end our
much.
conversation. I had wanted to interject at a couple of junctions, but way back. But I think we've had some audio issues there. But I'm glad we've been able to come this far in this conversation. I wanted to talk a bit about some of these rules and perhaps how we would need increased public sensitization on some of these rules or codes, that NIWA has, and how best to also avoid issues like capsizing and fire explosions and collisions with other vessels, on the inland waterways. Because some of the problems, again, is from the unprofessional conduct of some of these boat operators and their, seeming ignorance of the issues. People who are not qualified to drive boats are seen on our waterways, and this also increases boat mishaps on our inland waterways. I'd like to thank you so much, Tayo Fadile, Pioneer General Manager, Corporate Affairs, National Inland Waterways Authorities. I would like to thank you so much for joining us on Insight today. This is a conversation that is ongoing. Of course, a lot more needs to be said. Like you said, NIWA is making so much progress in the urban areas, so it will seem like focus should now move to the rural areas where we're having, the bulk of these boat mishaps or marine accidents. I'd like to thank you so much for coming on Insight. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Let's move on to our next conversation. I reckon risk assessment is a fundamental safety element in film production. Of course, for instance, there must be basic issues like being careful when lifting heavy equipment and ensuring that all electrical appliances are PAT tested. But the thing is this, I acknowledge that a lot of times movies are shot in challenging environments. But I wonder what kind of safety precautions are taken to make the work environment safe for production. Let's get into all of that as I bring in my guest at this point, Dimbo Atiya, Nigerian Nollywood producer and director. Dimbo is the winner of the 2022 AMVCA Best Africa Magic Original Drama Series category award, of course, with the drama series Alita. Dimbo, thanks for joining me. I know you're in the plateau. You're in Jos Plateau there. I don't know. What I don't know is whether you're perhaps shooting another spin-off of Alita. Me, I'm still enjoying the Rishantes as it is. Are we expecting a spin-off, another spin-off perhaps?
No, thank you for having me once again. NTA is always home. I'm just here just to take some days off to relax.
You're flexing in Jos.
It's the best place to come and chill, The weather is beautiful, people amazing. So just taking some days off after we wrapped shoot on our next movie called Strong. And that's why I'm here for now. So, yeah.
Nice. Okay, great. Dimbo, great to have you here. While it is unfortunate that we are revisiting this whole issue of safety protocols in film production at such a time, following of course, I know you are aware of the Anam River incident where we lost John Paul and some members of the film production crew. I think it's even more critical to review the standard operating procedure for risk assessment at different stages of or phases of film production before we get to that particular incident involving Junior Pope, of course. But let's just begin with something more generic or general in terms of safety practices during production. How integral are safety meetings for the entire crew before and upon arrival at maybe each new location or production locations that you shoot? Are safety meetings, part of your production, and do they actually do happen at all?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that that is an integral part of pre-production. A lot of times, these are things that we overlook. They are oversight. They're things that most times, and I'm not trying to throw Nollywood under the bus, it's just that at this point, we need to be very honest about the situation. I can confidently tell you that it's 0.01% most times that productions actually have safety meetings. And I'm guilty of that because I'm just sitting down here, I'm thinking about it, do we really make safety an issue when I always have production meetings before the production starts. I really can't recall any time that we said, okay, now we're going to talk about safety on set. And I'm just trying to put myself out there. I don't know about other people, but then the frequent or the constant accidents that we see on set really does say something about the fact that we have less of these meetings when we look into productions. Simply because a lot of times it is now we thing. Like, I know you know me, just do your job and let's get out of this place. Most times, hardly would you find that there are medical personnel on set because that's extra cost. Most times you find out that there are hardly first aid boxes on set. There are people who get them, but not all the time. And so it's not something that is recurrent in Nollywood per se, because I promise you, a lot of people overlook that. We talk about other things, but a lot of times we hardly talk about, we're going to be walking at the riverine area. Safety measures are X and X. I dare anybody to show me their call sheet where there are places where they put safety measures.
I mean, you've just talked about the call sheet there. I mean, one would expect absolutely. That should be part of the call sheet.
Absolutely, but that's something that you will hardly find. And I'm saying it, I'm also guilty of that because I don't remember anywhere on my call sheet where it says, this is the number you call when you fall sick and da. You're supposed to have those information. But then when things happen, we always make sure that we take care of it instantly and make sure it's fine. Recently, I just wrapped shoot and we had an actress on set who had a problem with her legs. Accommodation was supposed to be on the second floor of a building. And she complained about, my legs going up and down the staircase would be a problem. And we instantly changed the entire accommodation to a different location and we gave her a ground floor house. Now, to be honest with you, it wasn't something that we talked about or she complained about it, and then we took care of it immediately. I've had times where actors when I was filming Halita, one of our characters, the character Onfo, had fallen sick on set, and we instantly had to do the most that we can to save her life, rushing her to the hospital, getting an ambulance, taking her to the best medical facility to get the best, but we didn't have a standby ambulance. Why? Because that's cost that a lot of Nollywood productions don't have. We didn't have a standby medical doctor because that's something that is also an extra cost. So a lot of times we look over these things because somehow we just pray to God. We Nigerians, we just faith everything and say, let's just go. God will protect us. Let's shoot this thing. And if anything happens on your set, fine. If it doesn't happen, that's okay. 4 years ago, I lost a very important member of my cast, Matt Alkali, who didn't die on our set, but went to shoot another movie in a bush somewhere and had a medical emergency, and they couldn't bring him out of the bush on time. He died before he got to the hospital. And that's because there were no cars around, no safety measures, nothing. He just died. And at that point, it was a major industry news. We talked about these things, and then we moved on and forgot about it again. Nobody else brought it up. Unfortunately, until this time around, now we're having the same conversation. So it's a very typical thing with us in Nigeria. We shout about things, and then we just overlook them and we move on. I am guilty of that also, so I'm not blaming anybody. I'm putting myself in that. And it seems like this is something that we have to look forward and correct in the near future.
So I guess we'll begin with you, because how do they say the change begins with you? So it begins with me. The change, thoughts begin with you.
Oh, absolutely. It is going to be a mandatory thing.
Yes. So I was just wondering, because I mean, let's take a step back now and look at what played out with, the episode at the Anam River, and imagine if the call sheet had identified that, look, we're going to have this scene somewhere along this riverine community. Okay, how are we going to go about it? Do we take boats with life jackets? Do we take a crew of 2 at a time? Do we travel during the day and don't do night travels? I mean, that would have made sense, and perhaps maybe some of the guys who lost would still be alive today, telling us, about this movie, or probably promoting this movie. And you talked about a colleague of yours. I mean, a crew member you had on Alita that who of course wasn't on the set, who did not die on the set of Alita, but passed on the set of another movie. I mean, we need to break this jinx. How do we break this jinx in Nollywood so that it's not just talk and talk and talk, and we wait for something to happen and then we'll come back, revisit the issue, and then life goes on? I mean, what needs to change? Is it in terms of policy? Is it in the terms of industry players taking it upon themselves to push or drive the change process? What really needs to change?
A lot of the relationships that we have in Nollywood and production is almost like an abusive husband and a wife situation, where the wife just keeps staying and saying things will get better. And that is entirely on a lot of people who accept some of these things. For the sake of, I just want to work, let's just go. We go to the bush, and you guys are kept in situations where there is no safety at all. And all you want to do is just collect your 250, 300, 500, and you get out of that place. If you survive it, fine. If anything happens to you, you go back and know. So Nollywood producers have become so very relaxed about the fact that, after all, I'm providing jobs for them. Why do they stress me? I'll just give them what they want and they go away. But if we begin to demand for these things, they call you and they say, you're going to be shooting, and on your script it says there is a scene where you're going to jump off the beach, or there is a scene where it says you're going to have a car crash, or you're going to ride them. First of things you're going to be asking is, what is wrong? These are questions that you must ask. Then I'll tell you, okay, no, we have a standby medical team, or we have standby professionals. Like, for example, these guys that were going on a boat, I bet you that was not the first time they had been on a boat on that season. In most of those movies, it's something that they're constantly used to. They've probably been doing it for the longest time, and on that day that happened. Asking, and they kept demanding for the fact that this thing has to be done right. We probably wouldn't be having this conversation now. So in order to change this, I think that it's very important that if you're going to put yourself in harm's way, or you're in any danger for any production, first of all, what is the value of this production to my career? Because the truth is, I want to give it everything, because this thing is going to push me to the next level. But how do we go about it? Can this producer provide the safety that I need? And the truth is that most times, producers, you have to stay away from stunts or actions that you cannot provide safety for. So you want an actor to jump off a third line, even if it's a stunt person, there must be some sort of safety. What if he jumps off the bridge and something happens to him? You don't have people standing by to rescue or anything. We just do these things because, he's used to jumping off the bridge, he'll be fine. It's a problem. So there must be a conversation between those who are producing and those who have been put in front of the camera and have to do some certain stunts. But the bigger issue is this, that sometimes the issue of insurance in productions is very, very key. And that is something that I stand corrected. I do not believe that in Nigeria right now we have any curated, designed, or deliberately constructed insurance policy for the film industry. I doubt that, because most times
that is an issue.
It is a mighty issue, and it's something that has to be looked into. It has to be said that every production company should have some sort of insurance policy anytime you're going on any production. It should be a mandatory thing. It should not be something that we overlook. It should say that you have safety for any equipment that you're renting. There is safety or insurance for anybody that you're putting on any kind of stunt or any kind of thing that you're doing.
So would that be an intervention? Would such an intervention be, of course, has to be at the policy level now, with government perhaps putting that in place?
That's the thing. Oh yes, we need to get to that place where we're having those conversations. Every time it comes to Nollywood, people don't take us seriously because we do not have these things on ground. We feel like this film thing is just people joking around. Who sit down in the National Assembly probably don't take us seriously because they feel like it is film. And you know how it's stereotyped that anybody that is in the film industry is probably just wasting his time, is wayward, or doesn't know what he's doing. So at the policy level, we have to begin to have those conversations about how we need to make sure that it's mandatory for every production company. If you're going to register a production company, there must be some sort of insurance that you have that covers your productions most times. That's on but then in terms of for those actors that we hire every day, if anybody is calling you on their set, don't ask me first of all, how much are you paying me? If I finish having that conversation with you, ask me what insurance are there to cover.
But
I know one or two companies
Dimbo, wouldn't that be easy? I mean, I hear you and I hear you loud, and I agree totally with you. But wouldn't that be easy for maybe someone, maybe like a big man for you in the industry already? Because, and I'll give you an example. The way, if RMD were to come out, or perhaps Jim Ike, or one of these big names were to come out to complain about a situation like, okay, look, no, I can't do this stunt. What do you have on ground? I mean, complain or express their fears or voice their fears and concern about potential hazards, like you've just alluded to. I wonder how it will be coming from, say, a newbie who is probably just, coming out for the first time and voicing their concern about potential hazards. If the picture I get when you paint all of this, and I'm not saying maybe that's completely true, but I see a culture of negligence, a culture of I don't care. I mean, in as much as I'm getting paid, I will just do, and it's costing us so much. It's costing us lives. Just look at what we've lost within the last week alone.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that this whole culture of negligence spreads across every facet of our country or our situation. So Nollywood is just a part of it. And like you rightly said, it might not be something that is, how do I put it? It might not be something that is very common with everybody now, but it is a culture or it's a policy that we need to begin to insist on. Down the line, it now becomes a thing. And then it checks that, I mean, even if you're hiring a newcomer, the fact that your company has a policy that covers everybody, it's fine. But we cannot say, because there are young people who might not be able to raise their voices concerning this matter, and then we should just let it be. No, I am saying that let it be that it's mandatory if you're going to register a production company in this country, that you have some form of insurance policy, that it is part of the registration, so that way we know. And then of course you get to review it, and for your own safety. And one of the things that I think is also very important is that we need to put in place legal frameworks, quick dispensation of justice, so that people know that if you play with people's lives, there is instant justice when anybody takes action legally. These are issues that we must talk about. We have to have.
Yes. Please let me allow you land on that, and so I can take you up on some.
I'm saying these are issues that we must take seriously because we deal with people's lives every day. The creative sector suffers a lot. Why? Because we do not have a justice system that dispenses it instantly. For example, I hire an actor, and midway into the production, he starts giving me diva moves. What happens most times, I beg this actor until we finish. Why? Because I can't start doing legal runs with you. It takes forever for anybody to listen to me. Imagine a situation where probably in the industrial court or something, there is a tribunal or a sitting courtroom where you enter today and the following morning you get justice. I promise you everybody will sit up in this industry, because you want to be very careful. If the person says, you said you had insurance policy, but by the time this happened, you couldn't cover it. It turned out that you did not actually update your insurance policy. You only had it from the beginning, so you were deceiving us all this while. People will update their insurance policies every day. When you make promises for actors or for crew members on set, you will keep to it, because if they take you to that court, justice will be dispensed immediately. So those are the things that it has to be a holistic thing for us to be able to get this done. Without those things in place, we will always go back. I promise you, Come back in the next 1 year or 6 months. We will have forgotten about this matter. We will have moved on. And those same people that are complaining about where this is an issue will still go back on those boats to go and shoot those half-baked films and risk their lives and come out, and tomorrow, until something else happens, then we now remember that there's safety issues that we must take care of.
Not to discountenance the efforts and the amounts of work that Asaba Hood, I mean, I don't know, is that what they call them now? It's Asaba Hood, different and separate.
Yeah, that's what they call themselves.
Nollywood. I mean, not to discountenance the amount of work that they put into their productions, but, and in fact, speaking more expansively and generally in terms of Nollywood, I am wondering why some of our movies are not shot in controlled environment. Take like a movie scene in a riverine community where they have to travel for long hours, or they have to be on the water for some times. And I'll tell you, it's not just that's about Wood or whatever they call themselves, you know, that do this. There's a very popular movie that was shot on the Lagos Lagoon. I won't mention names here, but we all saw how they traveled at night. There was a night scene with speedboats, you know, driving, and I kept wondering. I remember seeing that movie with my 15-year-old, and then he asked me, is this for real? And then I said, maybe it's in a controlled environment. It's probably in a pool, a shallow swimming pool or something, and then it was photoshopped, and then perhaps in post-production it was produced this way. I'm wondering if that is really the case, or did I lie to my son? Or is that really how
No, you didn't lie. No, you didn't lie to your son. Why? Because Nollywood productions do not have the kind of budgets required to shoot in controlled environments. I promise you, it's that almost impossible right now because of the kind of budgets that we work with.
So we're actually shooting these movies at night. We on speedboats.
Oh yes, we're actually getting on those speedboats and shooting them on those wide waters. We do not have any facility in Nigeria, a backlog facility where it's a green room with a water surface where you can simulate these things. There's none. If there's any, please somebody should let me know. And most times it's because Nollywood, we do not have the kind of budget that will make us have to go do all those CGI and reconstruct the entire environment. It's very hard and difficult. So we jump on the waters, get the speedboats, and we film these things on top of the water. So you did not lie to your 15-year-old son. That is an actual real life situation that was captured in the movie that you saw. But those are the issues that we deal with every day as film. The safety measures that we take, even when we do castings, you go abroad and they have rigs and structures where you put a car on a rig and rig it so the car is not driving by itself. It's being pulled by a truck where everybody is on its safety. In Nigeria, we literally put cars on the road and we're trying to film the most that we can. That's part of the issue. These are the things that we deal with here. So these are the problems that we have as an industry. But a lot of it also is the fact that we need to put in more investments into Nollywood. Nollywood is one of the most productive and one of the highest, so to say, in the creative space where it employs more people. And I think that people should look into investing more in creating environments, giving us studios and backlogs that can really take us away from all of these things. If I have to shoot a jungle, I don't really have to go into a real jungle. If I have to shoot a water scene, I don't have to go to a real pool or anywhere and shoot. These are controlled environments where I can go to. If I have to avoid the noise, let me shoot in a place where I can literally simulate the noise later. But these are all the things that we suffer every day. And I think that it's high time that investors begin to see the opportunities in putting these things in place. Nollywood producers must also understand the fact that you have to kind of bring up the level of productions so that way, our production values are growing. That way, our stories are more authentic. That way, they're more engaging so that we can really save lives by trying to work at controlled environments. It is what it is as it is right now.
Dimbo Atia, Nigerian Nollywood producer and director, I'd like to thank you so very much for being part of this conversation. I mean, things have to change in Nollywood, and the quicker they change, the better. I would like to thank you so much for being part of our conversation on Insight on this episode.
Thank you for having me.
I'd like to remind our viewers that Dimbo won the 2022 AMVCA Best African Magic Regional Drama Series category award for Alita. I mean, I enjoyed Alita. If you've not seen Alita, probably you need to go out there and see Alita. And of course, the spin-off, He says he's not shooting another spin-off in Jaws. So let's take
No,
it.
I'm just resting.
Thank you so much for coming to our program.
Thank you for having me. NTA is always home, and I'll always be here for you guys.
Thank you so much. And Elizabeth Omori is up next.
Heat waves can have huge impacts on society, including a rise in heat-related deaths. Heat waves are among the most dangerous natural hazards. Population exposure to heat is increasing due to climate change, and the World Health Organization says heat waves can burden health and emergency services. Since heat wave is a health concern, Dr. Esther Ofodeli of Quick Clinic by Hope Without Borders will speak to us on what to do this season to be comfortable and reduce stress. Dr. Esther, thank you for joining us on Insights.
Thank you for having me.
All right, aside the uncomfortable feeling, how does heat waves affect the body and mind?
Well, due to the level of heat, the temperature of the body tends to rise higher than the usual. You know, the body system it's like a thermostat. And so it regulates the heat level of the body. But when it rises above that, it begins to cause damages. Of course, with this, there's a lot of dehydration going on. That we get to see a lot of people dehydrated. You can have heat stroke. You can have dizziness. There's just so much that could go wrong with you. There could be fainting. There could be high temperature beyond that could go on for more than 2 hours, not necessarily because you are sick, but due to the heat, the temperature of the environment. So everything in your body system is going on. There could be confusion. You could faint from just the heat stroke, or in fact, the heat. And then, of course, the worst of it is the heat stroke. So during this period, we would tend that people should drink a lot of water to keep hydrated, because you're losing fluids from the body system, from your pores, you're sweating more than the usual. And so, knowing fully well that the body mass consists of about 90% of water. And so, when you're losing more, a lot of things are going wrong because the cell gets dehydrated. And of course, it wouldn't function as it should function on a normal day. And so, that is why we ask that people go out with their bottles. Let me put it that way: their drinking bottles, so that you don't get dehydrated. And from time to time, you keep taking in, fluids to replenish whatever that has gone out. And then also, this is not the period to wear thick clothing. This is a time to always wear something light, especially in the afternoons between the hours of 11, 12. Well, right now, 11 is beginning to join in. 12 to 4 thereabouts, it's usually very, very hot. It's advisable that you wear something really light, something that you can take in at least.
Dr. Esther, let me come in there. Talking about water, it's like the more we take water, the more we sweat. And people, for long, most times people take cold water. Of course, there's a feeling you get when you take cold water when the weather is very hot.
The fact is, the cold water just gives you that feeling to, at the moment, relieve your thirst. That's just the basic thing the cold water does. But you don't get filled. You don't get to take enough with cold water. When you're taking cold water, you tend to take very, very little quantity. But when you take, I wouldn't say hot, I would say room temperature water.
Okay.
You tend to take in more. You tend to take in more, and then your cells tend to get more and more refreshed, because what you're losing, it's not going to be equated to what you're taking. In as much as the cold water makes you feel good, yes, it quenches your thirst immediately, like you feel okay, I've taken in, but you tend to take really little quantity, which doesn't balance with what is leaving the body, and then that is why you have reduced urine output. You notice that people don't urinate, which is not also good for the kidneys. you know. So we really need to be able to take in. I know the lukewarm water or the room temperature water is not really so sweet, but I think it's better for our body. When you take it in, you'll be able to take a lot more, and your cells will be able to get a lot more to be able to function appropriately.
Okay, before we talk about symptoms, some persons take block, ice block. Is this proper at this time? Is it advisable?
Well, uh, it doesn't, for me, I would say it's not so okay.
Okay.
But again, consider the weather. The weather is really hot. Telling anybody to take room temperature water now is just like passing information, but nobody's really listening.
Mm-hmm.
But for those taking the advice, it's better it's a bit cool than really taking ice blocks.
Tell us more about common symptoms of heat waves. What are the common symptoms of heat waves?
Okay, obviously, number one for me would be dehydration, which is really fatal, especially for children. Children,
Okay.
infants, it could kill within hours. So that is for me. For me, it's number one. You could have dry lips, reduced urine output. You could have confusion, fainting, could go down to heat stroke, of course, heat rashes on the skin, which also predisposes you to a lot of other skin conditions. Um, the fact is that mostly for me, majorly is the the dehydration, which could also give other symptoms as dizziness and nausea. It could come with so many other varieties of things, but basically, it's the dehydration for me, plus, which could go on to fainting, which could go on to heat stroke, which could go on to in fact, a lot more because the cell is dehydrated. There's no urine output, which could get to scarring of the kidneys. There are just a lot of things that could go wrong because of the low, should I say, low water content in the body.
Okay. Now, is it true that many people show traces of pneumonia this period? Because you see them taking very cold water, some chew blocks, and then the children, you see them lying on the floor, on tiles, including adults. Adults do that too. So, are there traces?
Well, yes, this period I would say there's a connection. Why? Because of the air itself, it's not, should I say, it's not clean. And then the ventilation processes, the overcrowding systems that we have around us. That's why we talk about people opening up their windows and their doors for cross ventilation because you get to see a lot of houses. Some people are about maybe 4, 5 people in a room, and then there's no free flow of air. And so there's a high rate of contacting infections. And when it comes in, it flows around everyone because there's no free flow of air. The basic thing is that right now there's also, because of the environmental system, it predisposes us to a lot of respiratory infections. And so, of which pneumonia is one of them. So it's not necessarily the cold. We look at pneumonia in terms of cold because it goes into the lungs.
Why do people lock their windows always? No cross ventilation in some houses. Why? Can you tell us
Okay,
the
well,
risk involved?
I think that is just, well, one, a mindset, and that is not really helpful because then there's no cross ventilation. Then, especially for those who have little children, um, Nigerians have a mentality of a uh, cold will cold will come in and then the child will get sick, which is very wrong. The child would actually get sick because the child is not getting fresh air. It's getting let me call it the air is not clean. You're breathing it, you're breathing out carbon dioxide and somebody else is breathing it in, not clean at all. But when you open up your windows, free flow of air, clean air, maybe not necessarily very clean, but there's an exchange. There's an exchange. So even if somebody has an ongoing infection, you might not get it as compared to somebody who stays in a secluded place, in a closed place. There's no free flow of air in any form, and so it's just revolving the same air that some other person is breathing out. And then, of course, some people also enjoy the air conditioner, which is good. But what we get to look at is how many times do you get to clean that air conditioner? Because, of course, it's a cool place, and then the microorganisms get to also breathe in there. And so you put on your air conditioner, which is good, but it's not cleaned, and then there are microorganisms breathing in there. The air conditioner just blows it out, and then you breathe it in. And then the next time you're having one thing or the other, pneumonia and all that, and you're wondering how. I've been staying inside, I've been using my ACs, which is not really so okay. Sometimes you need to put off your AC, aside the fact that it needs to be cleaned regularly. You need to put it off and take in like natural air, which is really good for us.
Good for us. Now let's talk about food and clothing this time around. What
Yeah.
should we eat? What should we wear? How do we wear these clothes?
All right. For me, food definitely balanced diet. I know right now the economic system is really, really, really beautiful, and so I will advise whatever you eat, try to add a little bit of vegetables, a little bit of fruits. Aside the fact that your water is a constant, of course, your water is always there. But then for the food, um, if I'm to give a diet plan, it wouldn't work because not everybody might be able to afford it. But whatever it is you're making, make sure that at least it's balanced enough for the family. There should be vegetables, there should be a little bit of protein at least to go with it. And of course, from time to time, there should be fruit. And then coming to our clothing right now, this is not the time to be let me not say fashionable. It's good to be fashionable, but put on something very light. Presently, I think everybody should go on something very light. Whatever kind of clothing you like, let them be light. Let them be something you can get in air into your body from time to time. And of course, if it's possible, your fan, your umbrella, your hat, you go out with it. Go out with a hand fan. If you can afford the rechargeable fans, okay, put on a hat, a sunglasses to just to help you all round. Put on use an umbrella while going out. It would help reduce the heat.
Doctor, you mentioned babies. What should babies be wearing now? What should their fashion sense, let me use that word, be right now that we are having heat waves?
Well, for babies, more of cotton materials, very light clothing. I know we have a lot of beautiful clothing that are not really so thick for them. Of course, they need to be properly dressed, but then it shouldn't be the whole um, thick, I don't know, thick materials that we usually go with. Because when you get to the hospital, you see a lot of mothers. Yes, their children look beautiful, but then what they are wearing is so thick, thick enough to give that child a fever and then wrap the child. So right now, it's really no need for all that. The fashion is good, but again, tone it down so that your child can be okay. You know, something light, cotton materials, just wear them something very light, depending on how old the child is. If it's an infant or a toddler, you can go without even wearing some stockings and all those hand gloves and all that. It's not really necessary right
At
now
this
because
time.
it's not cold. Yes, it's not cold, it's very hot. Those kids, those babies are not they're not objects, they're human beings, and their body system works just exactly like yours. And so there's no reason for them to be clothed in a certain way while other people are wearing something very light. You see mothers, they wear sleeveless and they're trying to get feel better, but then their babies are wrapped and rolled in so many, heavy clothing, which is not okay. those children are human beings and they deserve to feel good. They deserve to get in enough air into their system. They deserve not to feel hot.
Dr. Esther Ofodide, I want to thank you so much for your thoughts. Thank you for enlightening us this week on Insight. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that's it on this episode of the program. Do join us same time next week for more on Insights. My name is Nnamdi Ojikpo.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.